What's going on, Reading Youth? Tonight, I want to kick things off with a few hot takes, and I want you to either throw a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether you agree or disagree. Are you ready? The greatest superhero of all time is Iron Man. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay, well, what about this one? The greatest fast food burger of all time is Five Guys. Now that's saying a lot because honestly, I love In-N-Out, but I really had to be honest with myself and say Five Guys. Those Cajun fries, chef's kiss. What do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down? All right, last one. The greatest fried potato type, meaning between French fries, curly fries, waffle fries, everything in between. The greatest fried potato, in my opinion, is a tater tot. Thumbs up or thumbs down? See, it is always fun to talk about what and who is the best. Sometimes it can be debatable, right? We talk about things like, who's the greatest basketball player of all time? What's the greatest movie trilogy of all time? Who's the greatest superhero of all time?
Iron Man.
Now, these GOAT debates are always interesting because people pick different answers and then they justify their answers with different reasons. That's part of what makes the debate so entertaining. In this series, we're gonna talk about the people who Jesus said were the GOATs. He didn't talk about specific people. He talked about a specific thing that these people did. And then he told other people that they could do the same thing. It was his advice for being the greatest in any room that you're in. Now, what was this thing that Jesus advised people to do? It comes down to one simple word: serving. It's all about showing up on behalf of other people. It makes me think of a couple of friends that Sam and I have. Actually, there are new Tampa location pastors, Pastor Scott and Shay Stewart. There was this one time where Sam and I were just super sick, like could barely get out of bed, barely get something to drink, and Shay cooked us this incredible homemade chicken soup, and Pastor Scott dropped it off at our house, grittying his way down the driveway. Now, this small gesture meant so much to us, and it's something that I will always remember. We can all probably agree that serving others is important, right? It's something we should all care about. But so often, we don't think about how we can do this for other people. It's not that we have a problem with it or that we don't want to do it. It's just we have other things going on in our lives. For one, we're busy. It's hard enough for us to serve others because of all the things we have to do in our own lives. How in the world would we have time to help someone else? We have our own stuff going on, our next practice, that next project, the next presentation. Two, it's inconvenient. It takes time, effort, and energy to serve someone else. And if we're honest, when we have spare time, we feel like we just need to catch up on all the rest in time that we've lost. Third, we fall into an all about me mindset. We don't do this on purpose, and we're certainly not trying to be selfish. But sometimes we can get to a place where all we think about is me. We obsess over me. So the idea of serving someone else doesn't even cross our minds. Now, this isn't to make you feel guilty. We all do it. We all have a lot going on in our own lives. But after a while, without realizing it, we can slowly drift to the place where we are the only thing that we think about. But here's the good news. What we're gonna talk about for the next few minutes can make your life better, your friendships better, and the world better. It really is a win-win. In the New Testament, which is the second half of the Bible, there are a bunch of letters written by the Apostle Paul. Paul was one of the most influential Christians this world has ever seen. He started a bunch of churches, and he would later write letters to those churches to encourage them. Now, what's cool about these letters is that they really help us understand what it means to live out our faith in Jesus. In one of those letters, Paul wrote this: "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." I want to break down these verses and I want to get a little interactive with you. So let's start with the first part of the verse. Paul used phrases like selfish ambition and vain conceit. How would you describe someone who was selfish, vain, and conceited? Well, you'd say they were all about themselves, right? So over here, he was describing someone who's me-focused. He wasn't saying they're a bad person. In fact, he acknowledged that we all have a tendency to do things from that mindset. That's why he used a replacement word, rather. Another way to say this is instead. Rather than or instead of doing that, let's do something else. And that's when he wrote about things like humility, valuing others above yourself, and looking to the interests of others. Paul was talking about being others-focused. We've all experienced both of these, right? Maybe you've had a friend who's me-focused. They're not a bad person, they're just kind of all about themselves. They don't ask or remember what's going on in your life. You're going through a hard time, they don't really make an effort to support you or get involved. On the other hand, maybe you have a friend who's others-focused. Now, I'm not talking about someone who's a pushover or a people pleaser. I'm talking about a person who asks questions, remembers what's going on in your life, and goes out of their way to encourage you and be there for you. Now, you may say that you and your friend group are probably somewhere in the middle. That's normal, and I totally get that. I'm just making the point that there is a difference, and you've probably experienced both sides of it. Paul was saying, get rid of the me-focused mentality. Instead, or rather, take a genuine interest in others. After a while, people will notice and appreciate the difference. So, do you want to be the GOAT? Then think less about me and more about them. But this is about more than just being kind and unselfish, although those two are incredibly important and absolutely the example of Jesus we should follow. This goes one step further. Check out the very next words that the Apostle Paul wrote. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. We don't just serve because it's a good idea. We serve because Jesus served us. We don't just serve because it sounds nice. We serve because it changes cultures, communities, and ultimately the world. We don't just serve because it makes us feel good. We serve because we were created for it. There's something inside of us that just comes alive when we follow the example of Jesus in this way. Have you ever seen one of those videos where a relative who's in the military surprises their family and shows up at home or at school or an event? The family isn't expecting it, and then in one moment they turn and they see the relative. The look on their face is absolutely priceless. Why is that so emotional for us? We pretend like we're not tearing up because we want to look cool, but it's just too late. Obviously, we love seeing people cry and hug each other, and every family needs one another. But I think there's something else at play here, and that's what we're talking about today. When someone shows up for someone else, it is powerful. You and I were wired to serve others and make an impact in their lives. When you watch those videos, it's not just the emotional warm and fuzzies that get you. It's something deeper in your heart that's sparked. God created us to be relational, and God created us to serve others. That's why we find so much fulfillment in showing up and serving one another. So here's the challenge. Do something small to serve others, even when you don't have to. That's why this is the GOAT mindset. We wind up following the example of the greatest person of all time, Jesus. And we even experience something great for ourselves. So here's what I want you to do. First, I want you to remember, do something small to serve others, even when you don't have to. The second, I want you to think about 2 ways that you can show up and do something small. 1, show up personally. Show up in someone else's life this week. Go to their game, stop by their work, ask how they're doing, then follow up. Figure out some ways and times you can be present in the lives of your people and in the moments that matter to them. Now, I want to pause here for a second and say something. Do you know who does this for you each week? Your small group leaders. They don't get paid and they don't get recognition or credit, They spend countless hours away from their families because they care about you. They know that they are wired for something greater than just themselves, and because of that, they show up. I think sometimes we take for granted what they do, but it is a big deal. So maybe tonight you remind them how grateful you are for them in your lives. Next, I want you to show up locally. Sign up to serve somewhere. Maybe you feel God leading you to serve on a Sunday or help out at midweek. Talk to your youth director and they'll get you set up. It's not about recognition or credit. This is about us doing for others what Jesus did for us. It's about an others-focused mentality, and sometimes a small step can make a big difference. As you show up personally and locally, you discover something about yourself that you wouldn't have discovered otherwise, and it's amazing. You'll never regret it. Having an others-focused life is the greatest life unimaginable, and that is the very thing that Jesus modeled for you. But how does it start? By showing up. So this week, remember, do something small to serve others, even when you don't have to. So when you head to small groups tonight, I want you to think about sharing your answer to this question. What's one small thing you can do to serve others? Radiant Youth, I hope you have your best Wednesday yet.